Sometimes your dad can lose his mind the first time his daughter talks to him about having sex. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been counseling men and women for several years now. I want to respond to this commenter about my original post where I talked about daughters having transactional relationships with their fathers. This commenter says, "This just made me remember when I told my dad that I had sex my first time and he stopped speaking to me. That was pretty effed up, huh?" And this is part of the reason why I talk about sex on here. And, there's a lot of people, and I want to thank you for putting that out, because there's a lot of adult children or children who've experienced this, both from mom and dad. And if you guys, I could do another relationship on mothers who lose their cool over their child having sex. But there's a lot of children who experience trauma, not from necessarily having sex, but their parents' reaction to it, reaction to them, or their reaction to the actual act of having sex. There's a lot of parents that take it as a personal slight towards them. They become angry, they lash out because they feel like they've lost control. They're not in control of their child's decision or their child's body anymore. There is also an aspect wanting to, in many cases, wanting to humiliate your child, and lash out at them for their first sexual experience. And so they may put you through a humiliation ritual, silent treatment, and may treat you like you've done something wrong. And a lot of times, daughters get it worse than sons do. Sons usually have it pass, go out and sow your royal oats, son, that type of stuff. I won't say always, but a lot of times there is a stark contrast between how daughters are treated, because there's this idea that you're supposed to stay pure for forever and you're not supposed to have feelings. If you do have feelings, you do have sex, and you're automatically a whore, and all these other kinds of things. Not saying that you are, but that's how that's interpreted. There are a lot of parents that want to keep their children, small children, for forever, meaning that they want to basically infantilize their children and keep them little, keep them under their control, and keep them under their thumb. And they don't ever want them to grow into a mature woman or man, depending on who's watching this, but they don't ever want you to mature. And I think fathers do this the most but there's also another aspect. I don't know if you guys ever grew up watching the show, Who's the Boss, with Tony Danza and Alyssa Milano, and of course the fabulous Judith Light. And this might be, I don't know how many of you are, old enough to know about it, but basically I think Tony was supposed to be Italian and his daughter, but essentially the gist of it was he would never let her grow up. Like every time she expressed a desire to go out on a date with a boy or that she liked a boy, he would absolutely lose his mind, because he took that as a personal threat that he was losing her. He was losing his daughter, and she was no longer going to be his baby anymore. So whenever she would put on a dress or go out on a date, or, even talk about makeup, he would have a nervous breakdown about it, and just he would basically have an all out mantra, Judith Light was his boss, and she would try to talk him through it and do all this and that. And he would be like, no, I don't want her doing that. And so there is something about keeping children oppressed, and that means that you're in control, and that, they'll never leave the nest. There's an aspect of that. Of course, there can also be other sinister aspects to it as well, such as, and I hope this isn't the case for anybody watching, there's fathers who may actually be desiring their daughters and things of that nature, subconsciously desiring their daughters or lusting after their daughters. Don't say it's Dr. Jones being a weirdo. There's a reason why this is a popular genre of porn. And it's not because Dr. Jones wants it to be. It's because that is what a lot of people, a lot of men deal with. And take it from me, I worked with men in prison for a long time. And a lot of men would have their daughters as victims. I'll put it to you that way. Trigger warning, by the way. They would consistently fantasize. It would be something that I would have to get on them about. Like they would consistently like fantasize and try to do these like rituals where they would continue to sexually covet their victim, their daughter, or some other family member who they had, sister or something like that. But a lot of times they would just sort of lament and ruminate over this girl that they had made their victim. And it's, a lot of it had to do with like, for many years, I had conditioned her the way that I wanted her. I had groomed her. She did everything the way that I wanted her to. I was her first. I taught her those things. And so there is something with virginity that men just sort of latch on to, and they don't ever want. And it doesn't necessarily even have a protective measure to it, because as you said, your father sort of acted out. He didn't speak to you. So he took it as a personal injustice to him, as opposed to a teaching moment to, talk to you about sex, maybe explore how you were feeling, make sure everything was okay, and that you're okay, and about consent and, safe practice. He could have there was so much there he could have worked with as far as you are concerned, but he chose not. So, fathers can become very territorial over their daughter's body. They don't want you to have autonomy. They don't want you to have freedom. I mean, it could be down to your hair, your weight, just what you wear, makeup and things like that. They can become very territorial over who has access to you and take that as a personal threat or a sign of disrespect when there's other men that are introduced and really start to spiral out of control. That is so, it is so interesting to me when people have that sort of reaction, provided that everything's okay and that everybody is safe and everything like that. But, it's so interesting when people spiral from your child having needs, wants and desires, and wanting to go explore that when they become of the appropriate age and that are able to do so. But really, I think it's more of like, you belong to me, and I'm the one who should say what goes. You need to be wearing iron panties, and not doing anything until I give the say so, and I'm never going to do that. So I hope that helps. And of course, pretty much it's not a comprehensive video, but what we can talk about in the span of time. And please be sure to subscribe to my newsletter and check out my podcast, A Date with Darkness, on all platforms. Both are linked up in my bio. Thanks so much. Let me know what you guys think.